Welcome back to A Hushed Hideaway. Today we will be going back to explore a weird piece of history. We're going to dive into a mysterious sickness that ravaged Europe in the 14th and 15th centuries and then just completely disappeared out of nowhere. This epidemic, seemingly straight out of a horror movie, was something they called the sweating sickness. Now, this sickness began with a sense of apprehension, followed by cold shivers and sometimes very violent dizziness, a headache, severe pain in the neck, the shoulders, the limbs, and all of it accompanied with a huge amount of exhaustion. But this was only the first of it, because this cold stage, it lasted anywhere from about a half an hour to 3 hours. Now, after the cold stage was over, unfortunately, you got the hot and sweating stage. Now, when this took over, the sweat broke out suddenly without any other obvious reason. A sense of heat and headache, delirium, rapid pulse, and intense thirst came on fast. Now, on top of all of that, you also got palpitations and pain in the heart were very frequent symptoms when the heat portion of this sickness happened. Now, that right there sounds bad enough, but sounds like maybe a typical flu, right? But in the final stages, there were either great exhaustion and collapse or the irresistible urge to sleep, which they thought that if you gave in to the exhaustion or to the urge to sleep, it would be absolutely fatal to do so. So I guess no relaxing during this sickness. And not to make it any worse, but one bout of this disease did not grant immunity. Some suffered several bouts before giving way to the final sleep. So you could get it multiple times, and many did until they finally just couldn't recover it from it anymore. The sudden sickness appeared after Henry VII returned to England and claimed the throne following the Battle of the War of Roses. Some historians believe that the sickness came from the mercenaries that were hired to win the war for the Tudors. The illness was so aggressive that it usually killed the infected in less than a day, sometimes in as little as 2 hours after the first symptom. But because of how fast moving it was, with it bringing on all that different aches and fevers, it worked so quickly that those who survived the first 24 hours typically made a full recovery, so long as they didn't just keep getting it over and over and over again. But as long as they survived the first 24 hours, you're typically good. Now, the first wave of this so-called sweating sickness, also known as the English sweat, in just the first 6 weeks, the gruesome sickness killed 15,000 people. The disease struck England 5 times over the span of 70 years, always appearing near the summer months. And puzzling as it was, it always hit the wealthy people just a little bit harder. Typically, though, it didn't affect the young or the elderly as much. Infants didn't seem to get it. It was mainly healthy, middle-aged to young adults that you wouldn't think would typically get it. It disappeared after the 5th outbreak, though. They speculate maybe it was because of it mutating into a milder, less lethal version of the disease, causing this, one of the world's confusing medical mysteries, to stay in the past, to stay just that, a medical mystery. They still have yet to find out the origin, the cause, the reason of this sickness, or what it really was. Thomas Forster I believe I'm pronouncing his last name right. He was a physician during the first outbreak of the English sweat. He provided a written account of his own experiences in 1485 to try to get some kind of insight for everybody. Forestier put great emphasis on the sudden breathlessness commonly associated with the final hours of the sufferers. So I felt like he couldn't breathe, just exhausted, and it was just hard to do so. Many nobles and important people were those among the thousands that succumbed to this illness, including, but not completely limited to, Arthur, Prince of Wales, in 1502 at just the age of 15. Lord Chancellor Hugh of Ireland in 1528. Henry Brandon, the second Duke of Suffolk, at the age of 15, and his brother Charles Brandon, the third Duke of Suffolk, at the age of only 13. After only holding the dukedom for an hour after his brother succumbed to the deadly disease, did he fall prey to it as well. They also speculate that they may have been an outbreak dated before that even of the first reported over in England, and they believe it might have been in New York early in the year in 1485. But the records of that disease's symptoms are not adequate enough to be completely certain. Ultimately, the cause of the sweating sickness is still unknown. Some have tried blaming the sewage and poor sanitation and contaminated water supplies. Others think it was from something else entirely. Relapsing fever. That is a disease spread by ticks and lice. That had been proposed to be a possible cause. It occurs during the summer months, as did the original sweating sickness. However, relapsing fever is marked by like a prominent scab at the site of the tick bite and a subsequent rash, neither of which are reported symptoms of the original sweating sickness. So others decided they wanted to continue looking. So researchers have noted symptom overlapses with the Hantaevirus pulmonary syndrome and have proposed the unknown Hantaevirus as the cause. I apologize if I am not pronouncing that right, but the Hantaeviruses species are spread zoonotic. So they're carried by bats and rodents and insectivores, suggesting that the English sickness may have been rodent-borne. They both typically don't affect the young or the elderly, which puts it in the same line as the sweating sickness. So that could have been a very good suggestion. The criticism is that the speculation of the modern day Hantaevirus, unlike sweating sickness, they do not just randomly disappear, and they can be seen affecting isolated people. Another is that the sweating sickness was thought to have been spread from person to person, whereas Hantaeviruses are rarely spread that way. They're mainly spread from infected things from, say, the rats or the bats. In 1993, an outbreak of a remarkable similar syndrome occurred among the Navajo people in the region of Gallup, New Mexico. This episode, known as the Four Corners outbreaks, turned the attention to the sweating sickness towards its causative agent, Sin nombre virus. It's a Hantaevirus, a member of a group of viruses in Europe back then that were known for causing kidney failure syndrome, and a cousin to several tropical fever viruses transmitted by biting insects. This new disease was also known as the Hantaevirus pulmonary syndrome that was mentioned earlier, or as they would say, HPS. The Four Corners outbreak was due to the presence of Sin nombre virus within the droppings of the mice living in the vicinity of the Navajo dwellings. So when the droppings are disturbed or moved, for example, like if it was kicked up or you used a broom or, the wind blew them around, um, it creates an environmental airborne infection. So you could catch it just in the air as these things are moved. Whereas nowadays, rodents plague more of the poor communities in post medieval London. They were a feature in all levels of society. And back when this first started up, many people were feeling calm after the war to be able to build houses. And not to mention, it said that it kind of affected a lot of the more higher class society. So if you think about that, they all have, you know, homes in maybe land and the possibility for rodents. So, with that being said, rather than just trying to remove the rats, which was almost an impossible task then, they would just simply brush the droppings away. Could be releasing a cloud of the Hentea virus loaded dust, triggering the sweating sickness across England. Now, this is all speculation, and later on in 2004, a microbiologist by the name of Edward McSweigan suggested that the disease may have been an outbreak of anthrax poisoning. Right? He thought people could have been infected with anthrax spores present in raw wool or infected animal carcasses, and suggested exhuming victims for testing. Now, he's not the first one, but the numerous attempts have been made to define the disease's origin by molecular biology methods, but all have failed due to the lack of available DNA and RNA. So they still have yet to be able to find an exact reason. If the sweating sickness was indeed an ancient form of the sickness that spread in 1993, the virus may have mutated to a less violent form, perhaps in the process occurring in a capacity to pass between humans by mutating different ways, as a virus would do to try and stay alive. Or perhaps its evolutionary trajectory took a whole different direction, and maybe it became more fatal to its rodent hosts, thereby reducing the quantity of infected droppings, therefore reducing the amount of infected until it just completely disappeared altogether. Or maybe even the progressively changing climate in Europe in the Middle Ages becoming colder played a part. Now, this one was a little bit interesting. The subtle change in the rodent ecology made life harder for the virus to survive and sustain the same way. For instance, if comparing what happened in 1993 to what happened back in the 14th and 15th centuries, the Four Corners outbreak was linked to climate change from the El Nino. So the climate got cooler, the same as it was doing in the Middle Ages in Europe. So that might be another suggestion on what could have happened if it was indeed a mutated version of the 1993 sickness. We may never know the true cause of the sweating sickness. However, we do know that Hentea viruses are still with us. And regardless of the cause for the deadly, mysterious disease, whether it was any of them that they are suggesting or maybe something they hadn't even thought about yet, its time too could come again. Things could change, the environment can change, and it could come back. That, to me, I know today was a little bit more of a medical history, but to me, that is absolutely insane how it could just completely disappear. They still don't know what it's caused from, yet they still believe that there is a chance that it could come back one day. It's a little nerve-wracking to me. Anyways, today's word of the day is omphalos, meaning the center or hub of something. So in ancient Greece, the temple of Apollo at Delphi was considered the center of the universe. And Omphalos, also called a navel, was a rounded conical stone in the shrine at Delphi, marked in the center of the world, much in the way the navel would mark the center of the human body. While we now know that Delphi is not the center of the universe, Omphalos is still used as a meaning for the center or hub of something or somewhere. So you could possibly say something like the local library is the Omphalos of knowledge because it's the center, the hub of great knowledge. It's just it's pretty cool. Last but not least, this week's fragment of fixation is a book by the name of Lights Out by Navessa Allen. It's a dark romance that is based in modern day, but be mindful, it may have some trigger warnings. On the very first page, there's a long list. You just make sure you read it before you decide to get it. It may not be a good one to start with if you're just getting into the world of dark romance and smut, but nonetheless, I have almost finished it and I have thoroughly enjoyed each page. This week was very focused in a scientifical, historical subject, which is not for everyone. But if you did enjoy this, or if you like more of our mystical mysteries or fantasies, be sure to give us a follow so you don't miss any episode. As always, if you would like to help us out, the best way to do that is to leave a good review, share with your friends and family. Don't forget to visit our website and subscribe to our newsletter for the most up-to-date information. And until next story.